Hello, Jennifer. How are you? Psychic meteor,
Good.
psychic meteor, psychic medium, Jennifer Doran.
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Hi, Eric. How are you?
Good, good. I love you.
Love you too. What you been doing?
So what haven't I been doing? So
Oh,
I'm all over the place. I'm all over the place doing stuff, learning, guiding. I'm busy. It's busy over here.
oh, do you ever get tired and like need a
No,
vacation?
no, because he's like, before you get to that point, you just take care of yourself because it's a lot easier to take care of your needs over there than we have here doing that.
I guess so. All right. Well, so we are going to talk about a cool subject that I probably should have done a long time ago. It's all about mediums and having readings with mediums with mediums. Oh God, what is wrong with me today? Anyway, readings with mediums. So,
Yes.
like, sometimes very difficult to choose a good one, and there's a whole bunch of questions. But first, why don't I just open up the stage to you, and you say what you need to say, or
Okay.
or what you think we need to hear.
Yeah. So when you're getting a reading from a medium or a psychic medium, whatever it is, it's really is important to understand that not every reader is for every person. Sometimes the energies just don't blend well together, and so if you go and you meet with somebody and it just doesn't seem to be blending and going well, and it seems awkward, uh, try a different reader. Just try a different reader. Don't say, oh, this is a bunch of bullshit, and be done with it, because truly not every reader is for every person.
Why
And
is that?
well, it's just like, people, you meet somebody and you right away either click or you don't click, or so sometimes it's just an energy thing, a personality thing. There are certain personalities that all of us have a more difficult time with.
What could that
um
affect the validity of the information coming across?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And it can also affect the ability to even connect to the energy. If Yeah, so if it's not, if you guys aren't blending well, and sometimes truly I do believe that if somebody sits down for a reading and information isn't coming, or something, it's because the other side is like, no, this isn't for you, this isn't for you. And they're trying to get you to somebody else, because we still have our free will here, so we can still, you know, decide,
Or
no, I'm going to
maybe
do
they,
this anyways.
yeah, or maybe there's information they don't want you to have because it kind of messes up with your contract, I guess, right?
Yes.
And also, I
Yep.
guess if a reader has really heavy expectations, uh,
Hmm.
that must make it really hard for the medium, right? Because that's such dense energy. Does it make it difficult to connect with the other side? Or is it
Well,
you talk
yeah,
psychic readings or what?
for really any psychic medium, any kind of reading, if the person going in to get the reading, the sitter, is having very high expectations, one of the biggest things is the expectation of hearing something specific. Like, I'm going to hear this word or this phrase, or that type of a thing. That's a dense energy, and most often you're going to be disappointed if you go in with an expectation like that. Like, for instance, I had a client recently who, over the phone, she says, I need proof. I need you to tell me what I'm holding in my left hand.
Oh
And I
God.
said, well, I'm not the reader for you. I said, that's what you're talking about is more of a psychometry type of thing, and I don't have that gift, so I'm not going to be able to tell you at all what's in your left hand.
Right. So
So
yeah, but it must be really hard for mediums to be asked validating questions. What did my brother eat for breakfast the day he died, and things like
yes. Well, and then what happens, when you do that, when you ask for a specific, give me the specific thing, what it does is it takes the psychic or medium out of the energy, and it puts them into their mind. Now I'm trying to, like, think, like, I'm, and it does interrupt the flow of energy. And I mean, really, you just, if you can see what comes when you go in and you expect to hear a certain word or a certain phrase, or a certain thing, you might miss other information,
yeah.
because you're so focused on hearing this one word. This is how I'll know that you're here. Well, that would be great if they could always give us exactly what we wanted to
I
know
know.
that they're here. But a big part of it is trusting and believing
Right.
that they are, and that you have the ability to recognize when they are.
Because it seems like a lot of the mediums, it just goes right into their crown chakra, out of the mouth, and just bypasses their analytical mind. And they just like
Yes.
talk as if they're just, I mean, I don't know how they do it so quickly, but so that's usually the case, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
validating questions, it's like interfere with human filters, of course. And, but yeah, it'll get you into the analytical mind and the flow.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Because then it's like, as the psychics and mediums and stuff, we want everybody who sits in front of us to have a wonderful experience. So when a question like that comes, then it's like, oh my God, they're not gonna lie, and it does get you back into the physical world, and it creates some stress and some anxiety, which definitely can interrupt the flow of the information coming in.
Oh yeah, of course. And mediums get, I mean, like me, I get so much hate.
Yeah.
You're just talking to the devil and all that stuff. So, many mediums all their life, they've been ridiculed and told that they're
Yeah.
frauds, this, that, the other thing. So, you already are on shaky ground confidence-wise, and then somebody does that, it makes it even more difficult. Guess what? You're human.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
And also sometimes you have to kind of wait, because I remember one of our friends is a psychic, and I thought maybe she could look through wormholes or something. I didn't really think about mediums or anything, but one time she told us that we would be driving down a country road in Norway. We never did that. At that time, we never did. And then you'll come upon an accident, and there'll be this girl who's injured, and you'll tend to her until the ambulance comes, and then your family will be so impressed by, oh my God, she's not the adult we thought she was.
Huh?
And I thought, well, she's off today. But then a couple of years later, I had to take care of this girl who had a ruptured spleen in the middle of the road. And then I went back to the car, and my husband goes, do you realize what just happened? And it reminded me of what
Yes.
O'Neill said. And another thing was, there was a whole bunch of stuff like that. Oh, yeah, I know. You're going to have a dog that your husband will absolutely fall in love with. Well, we've had dogs, and he's never really been attached to any of them. So I thought, oh, she's off. But then here comes Bella, and that is the love of his life. So sometimes you just have to trust that the information is true, and it will fall into place.
Yes. And that is a good point, because when you sit in a reading and you get future stuff, it's like, oh, well, no, none of that makes any sense. But then you really do have to kind of wait and see if it comes up. So that's always a tricky one, because if you get a future reading when the stuff doesn't make any sense, you absolutely could walk away feeling like that person has no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So you have to, when you have a reading, you have to give stuff time to unfold that came up in the reading. Otherwise, it's
what is the difference between a psychic and a medium and a psychic medium?
okay. So all mediums are psychic, from my understanding. This is what I've been told.
Okay.
But not all psychics are mediums.
Hmm.
So a medium is somebody who can connect to and communicate with souls on the other side, souls who have crossed over. So not all psychics. Well, it's interesting, because what Erik has just said is everybody can do that. Everybody can do that. Everybody does have the ability to do that.
To do what? The talk
To connect to the other, yes, to connect to the other side and to get information from the other side. We all have that ability. But if we're talking just as far as people who are working as a living, being a psychic or a medium, if you sit down with somebody who is a psychic only, and they do not do mediumship, then they will not connect to people on the other side knowingly, Erik says. They will not knowingly connect.
Oh, they probably do though, but just
They're
don't.
they're still connecting to the information that's on the other side. They're accessing the energy, and it is coming from somewhere, but they just don't advertise it that way.
Okay. Well, how do psychics work? Are they able to look through a wormhole? I mean, how does that work? Or are they told things from somebody's higher self? I mean, how do they tell us the future? or
Okay,
register?
so it would depend on how they receive information, whether they're claircognizant, clairvoyant, clairaudient, um, any number of the clairs. That's how they would get the information. And then you froze up a little bit. I don't know if you can
I
hear me.
know,
Can
it's
you hear
okay.
me still?
I can
Your
still
screen
hear
froze.
everything you say.
Okay, so depending on how they get the information, it might just pop in the head. They might see an image. To me, and Eric is saying yes, that information is coming from a spirit guide or a loved one on the other side. It's coming from the other side. So it's connection to the energy. It's some people, you could say, like, could tap into the Akashic records.
Oh,
I know that there are readers who can do that, so they can tap into everything past, present, future,
well, maybe
so to
they
speak.
tap into the person's future self.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
tapping into some uh, energy of the living person in the future, or some spirit, right? Or the records. It goes to
Yeah,
records.
like a combination of all of that. And then it's also, Eric says, it's important to know that when you get a reading, especially when there's future stuff in the reading, that oftentimes you can change that outcome, because it's as you sit right there in that moment, the energy that is available for you, if you could kind of continue on this path. So if you go in for a reading and somebody says, oh no, you're not going to marry your boyfriend, well, you could walk right out the door and get married if you wanted to, and change that. Now, it might end up not being the best plan, but
Yeah,
when you sit and get a future reading, if somebody says something that you don't like, or you're like, no, 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 you can alter that outcome by your free will here.
absolutely. I mean, it's all about
Most
tapping
of the
into
time.
the current quantum probability. And every time we have
Yes.
a thought, that goes on to create another quantum probability that will go sometimes into a reality, unless our thoughts are not that strong for it. And then it kind of
Yes.
dissipates and that timeline stops. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And he said, Eric says there are some things that can't be altered. If you have absolutely written in stone an event to experience in your lifetime, well, no matter how much free will you put into that, you may have to, experience that anyways. You know, and like if you've written in a child, if you've agreed to bring a soul in at a certain time,
Mm-hmm.
that soul's going to come whether you try to prevent a pregnancy or not.
Yeah, because that's his or her free will saying, wait,
Yes.
we had a contract, we had a freaking deal.
Yes.
Four, I'm coming in.
Yep,
Run,
exactly.
number five. Anyway, so yeah, that's interesting. But you can change your spiritual contract unless there's the free will of another spirit that browbeats you into continuing it, right?
Well, yes, you can. And you can. And it's very difficult sometimes, because there are other people's free will involved. So for instance, if you are madly in love with this person, this one particular person, and you just keep trying to manifest and manifest and manifest that this relationship works out, and maybe it's written in your soul chart that this is not the person for you, and this is not the one that you marry,
Mm.
you can keep trying to manifest and manifest and manifest that. If the other person does not want to be with you, you are not going to be able to manifest or change that out of it, because you are subject to their free will too.
Of course, there's free will on both sides.
Yes.
And there's no real karma, and that, okay, now you're going to have to pay your debt to spiritual society. Um, we do want to, though, right? If we killed somebody, then we probably do want to experience what it's like to be murdered, for example,
Yes. Yes.
but we don't
Yep.
have to.
No, we do not have to. But yes, we may choose to say, okay, well, I killed you in one life. So this time when we come in together, I'm going to be like, a source of comfort for you, like that kind of thing. You don't have to do it,
Oh,
but oftentimes we do.
oh, okay. Um, why is it so difficult for psychics to pinpoint time? Like, okay, you're going to find the love of your life in 18 months, and 18 months passes, or Eric one time said we'll have a TV show and by 2017. Well, that time is come and gone. So, what is it about time? And I know what you're going to say because I already know the answer, Eric. That psychics have such a hard time with.
Yeah, it's because time here and time there are just very different. It's just very, very different. Um, it is that, you know, there's other people involved in getting stuff done there, so the free will can change the timeline of things. If somebody says, yes, you're going to find the love of your life in 18 months, and then you don't set foot outside of your house for 2 years, well, you know,
Yeah.
that's going to interrupt the timeline. Yeah, time over there and time here, they just don't, he said they don't really like
Mesh.
match up well. It
Yeah,
just
there's
doesn't
real
match up
time over
well.
there, but there's linear time over here, so it must be.
Yes.
So it's because of that, and it's because of the free will of other people. Like there may be a producer that was, I want to have a series about blah blah, you know, that's spiritual or whatever. But then
Yes.
somebody comes to him with another project. Oh, well, I'll go and do this, and so yeah, so that free will
Yep. Yeah,
can.
and you know, there's the part on the psychic or medium side, you know, Eric is saying every psychic and every medium that you sit with interprets information based on their own experiences. There has to be some frame of reference. And he said, you know, they do the best that they can to interpret the information that they get from the other side. It is not a 100% accurate form of communication, you know.
No, like if Eric were to say, tell my mom that she needs to give Bella more attention. What do you hear? Say, tell Bella.
Well, so for
Or do you
me,
hear the actual?
personally, how I work, I am mostly what is claircognizant. So I would just get the idea that you needed to give Bella more attention, and then I can put it into words. And that's why he said, when you were talking before about it comes in here and then it comes out here, especially for mediums and psychics, that when it comes in as an idea, they can formulate and speak it very quickly. They're not necessarily hearing every single word from the other side like that.
Eric, are there mediums that do, like, say word for word, you know, the conversation that she or he is having with the, yeah.
Yeah, he said that there are mediums who actually hear the words quite a bit. He said, but most mediums and psychics are having to add their own wording to it.
Of course. Yeah. And
You know, just
images, especially with
yeah.
images. If you just get images mostly, that must be very difficult to interpret because a picture is worth 1,000 words, you know.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You
An
don't have that kind
image.
of time.
Yeah, an image can be very difficult if it doesn't come with any other information.
So you have to ask the spirit or the higher
Yeah.
self or whatever,
Yes.
throw some words in with that dude, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Uh, why is it that a lot of mediums or most mediums have trouble with names? Like so and so's here on the other side. I think he's a grandfather figure, and well, what's his name? I don't, why is that?
Yeah. Well, you know, what Eric is saying is that it's, again, there are a lot of mediums and psychics who will get names every once in a while, like a clear cut, this is the
Boy,
person's name.
I've never met one.
So, well, not every time, but there are some who will get a name, you know, like I'm connected
Oh
to
yeah,
this person and this is the name. But every single time it's very difficult, because he also says that the way the mediums and the psychic receive the information might not be the most effective way for the soul to communicate. I'm claircognizant. If I connect to a soul who is not great at popping ideas into humans'
oh yeah,
head, the communication is more difficult.
yeah.
And they do, he says, we do over here have things that we are better at than others, ways of communicating that are easier for us, just like you do. So if you're connected to somebody who you don't communicate in the same ways, it can be harder to get the information. Names are something that is super, super specific. So it's just very, very difficult to always get the accurate name. It just is. They can't translate it. It's like, you know, sometimes people sit with a psychic or a medium and they expect them to know everything or to be able to get it, to access it. We can only access what they'll give us.
Yeah.
You know, so If you sit with somebody and they give you all these details about the personality and the, the passing and the looks of somebody, and they can't give you the name, it's like,
Is that because names are not important once you cross over? They just kind
yeah,
of,
plus they don't go by we don't necessarily go by the name that we were called in the last life
yeah, of course,
either.
of course.
So
But is it, do spirits, I mean, when people cross over, do they like forget their names because they lack relevance or importance?
no, he said, no, we don't forget our names because we can look at all of whatever our names were, but just much like we prefer to appear maybe a different physical way than we did in that life, we may prefer to be called something different than we were in that life. But no, he says we don't forget. We know all the names that we've ever been.
Okay. Well, Eric,
First, middle, last, junior, senior. He's we know all of that stuff.
well, a lot of times they get first initials, though. I'm hearing from somebody that says their name starts with an M, things like that.
Yeah, well, and so for like some people who are good with names, that might just be one of the things that they pick up on. Or you might have, like he said, sometimes people are more sensitive to a specific name. So if a medium for whatever reason picks up on the name like Robert a lot,
Yeah.
if they sit with somebody and there's a Robert coming in, they might be able to get that name
Okay.
because like they're more sensitive or more in tune to that name.
Okay.
But he said there's also a lot of names that maybe people would never have even heard of. If it's not a name that you're familiar with or have never heard, that would be very, very difficult to make somebody say. He said it'd be like if you don't know any German and you sit with a reader and you want them to start saying German words. Well, they have no frame of reference for that. So no matter how hard they worked on the other side, they're not going to be able to get the person to say words in German,
I can imagine, but if a deceased loved one is German, how do you understand what they're saying? Do they translate it into English or?
Okay, so like if you're claircognizant, where you get the idea that won't matter.
True.
For the people who hear, sometimes what they'll hear is they might hear a thick accent.
Okay.
Most of the time, they would still be able to interpret the information being given, even though it would have been a different language. Because again, on the other side, um, they could communicate in any language, basically.
Oh, wow. So they don't need
Um,
Rosetta Stone over there. Save a lot of money.
yes,
Okay.
yes, but they might give the sound of a thick accent, but that would be an identifying factor, not because they still have that accent necessarily over there.
Oh, okay. Eric, what do you prefer as your name?
Well, he says you gotta love Eric. Come on.
No, I love it.
He's, he said it's a good name for him right now. Everybody calls me that now.
Okay.
Um,
Name your second favorite name that you've had in another life, past or future.
um, I just keep hearing him say Steven, Steven, Steven,
Okay.
Steven, Steven.
Cool. Um, one of my favorite Rosetta Stone commercials is this guy is in a German sub. Well, the commander sits this young, brand new soldier down, and okay, you're gonna sit here. It says it all in German. You're gonna sit here, and you're gonna listen to the radio, blah 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 blah. Oh, okay, and he's so nervous, and the commander leaves, and then on the radio, it's like, help, 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 mayday, mayday. Hello, this is the German Coast Guard. Well, I can't do a German accent. It says, help, help, we're sinking, we're sinking. And he goes, what are you thinking about? I love that one.
Yes, that's cute.
Oh, God, I better keep my day job. Okay, why is it that a lot of psychic mediums or mediums are either gay or women, or either gay men or women? What is that, Eric? Or
Yeah. So what he said is that, well, he says women tend to accept that energy um, quicker than I guess than men. So it's why a lot of psychics are women, because they tend to accept that there's something more. Men tend to fight it or need physical proof. I need to see physical proof of this, where for whatever reason he says women are more open to it.
Okay.
Um, uh, that's interesting. He said it's kind of like that. Like it has something to do with maternal, like the maternal feelings.
Hmm.
If you have very strong maternal feelings, he said that's actually very common in people who are psychic, because they understand the energy, the empathy. You have to have that. You have to have the empathy and the energy exchange to be a good psychic or medium.
All right. What about gay men?
Um, well, again, it would be the empathy, the more sensitive.
All right.
He's so there's not really anything like necessarily specifically as far as the gay men
Okay.
go, but it's just that it's more of the empathy, the tenderness, the loving of animals, this kind of thing, that willingness to give love,
Okay.
and to be willing to be ridiculed, to be willing to put yourself out there.
Wow.
um he says women tend to not, in general, not fight as much and physically fight and physically cause turmoil. If somebody's you know criticizing them or critiquing them, they tend to just be like, okay, like they might get mad, but it's not going to come to like
Okay.
physical fighting.
Okay. A question from a blog member: why are mediums inconsistent depending on who you interview? Like you can ask the same question through one medium, and then get one answer and a different one from another medium.
Okay, it has everything to do with interpretation of the information coming in.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
we are just not infallible.
Of course,
So if
human.
you are asking the same question and getting different answers, it's because the information is being interpreted different ways by every person.
Maybe Eric, can you give us an example of a message and how it could be interpreted one way and then interpreted another way?
Um, okay, so this is one that I personally do not like. I do not. I have a block for this kind of information.
Okay.
Death. If you are asking, there are psychics and mediums out there who will predict death, and so you might sit with one, and they, if you have somebody you're talking about who's terminally ill, and they might say, well, this person has 2 years to live,
Right.
and then you might sit with somebody else and say, no, this person has 6 months to live.
Okay.
So maybe one of those is right, maybe they're both wrong. It's just whatever the person feels, they
Mm-hmm.
say. um, and so it's just, well, we can be wrong. He said psychics and mediums can be wrong. They can interpret the information wrong,
Can
you
spirits be
know.
wrong?
No, no, he said no. um, no, they have too much access to the information, so they would know the answer to the questions. Whether or not we are allowed to know them, that's different.
I see. And whether or not free will alters the course of things. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what it is though? It's that it's like wrong. He said nothing's wrong, nothing's right, nothing's wrong. It's all about learning.
Yeah.
And so no, the spirits would not be wrong
Right.
necessarily. We might have stuff to learn over here still, and still not perfect. That whole idea of perfection. No, nobody's perfect. And he said even most of the souls over here, most of us are still working on things because we haven't reached the level of perfection that we're seeking.
Wow. Interesting. Well, one example was a medium was talking about how someone died, and the medium said it was a heroin overdose, but really it was a gunshot wound. But
Mhm.
on the other hand, that person had a lethal amount of heroin in his system on autopsy. So there's an example of how
Yeah.
it can be misinterpreted. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah, that's excellent.
yeah,
Um, and so what it is that whatever that medium felt, that was what she picked up on the strongest, was the heroin in the system.
okay,
So
interesting.
then she takes that in and interprets it and says, well, that's what killed him.
Okay,
Um, and that's how the, like I said, the information's not perfect. It's not
yeah.
translated perfectly.
Well, probably would have killed him if he didn't. Well, it would have killed him.
Yes.
They didn't
Yes.
pull the trigger first. All right, here's another one from a blog member. Well, this is something my mom always says, whether it's from having a reading or a message come through at a spiritualist church. Why can't spirits be more specific with details, or is it determined by how well the medium interprets the message they've been given? Sometimes messages are too hit and miss and vague and could apply to anyone.
Yeah, it would be the interpretation. It would be the interpretation of the medium. And remember, in settings like that, the person who's the medium, the psychic, there's probably some nerves involved on their part. They're probably nervous, there's some anxiety. There's this pressure to perform and be perfect and to bring the messages through that will help people.
Yeah.
And so you could have some of that. And also, you never know the maybe that person isn't feeling that well, or they just got some bad news right before they came out there. So there's a lot of factors that are involved, and especially in a group setting, because there's so much energy there, that it can be very difficult to pinpoint what's coming in exactly. It would be great. It would be so great if we could always just pinpoint everything exactly and never be wrong about it. But Eric's like, that's not really possible.
Well, I think one responsibility is for the sitter to evaluate it with feelings. What feels right about what
Yes.
you told to me?
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I always, for people who are thinking of getting a reading, you really have to go with your own instinct. Who are you drawn to? Why are you drawn to this person? If you're suspicious, if you're nervous of people and you don't want to book online, you don't want to do that, well, then go someplace and sit with somebody live, or have recommendations from friends or something. There are ways to kind of find somebody that is suitable for you, but trust your own instincts.
Yeah, one vague thing that a lot of people get from all mediums. Can I have a message from my dad? It's almost always he wants you to know I love that he loves you.
Yep.
So I think that's one thing she's talking about. Is vague and can apply to in any case, unless your dad didn't love you.
Yes. Well, and that is could be number one. It's a vague question.
That's
That's a vague question, and from the other side, that they truly want us to know that they love us, that they're looking out for us, that there is more beyond this earthly life. And those are the things that they really want us to know. It's if you ask the question vague like that, you're probably not going to hear, oh, he wants you to know that he has this hidden life insurance policy and you'll find it at this safe deposit box at this bank on this street. You're not going to get something like that. If you ask a vague question, that's what they want us to know.
that's the thing that's most important for them
Yes.
to relate to us is I'm okay.
Yes.
Life does go on. I love you. Of course, that makes sense. All right. What are the responsibilities of the sitter then? Yeah. I mean, well, obviously they can determine in part whether a session is successful or not.
Yes. Yeah. So as far as the sitter goes, one of the biggest responsibility is to sit with somebody that you are drawn to, that you feel comfortable with. I am not a huge fan of people gifting a reading to somebody.
Oh yeah.
Anytime somebody does that and I sit down with them, I say, are you sure you want to do a reading? And because it's like, if the time's not right, if you feel like something about this psychic or medium makes me feel uncomfortable, or I'm not ready to get a reading because I'm afraid of what might come up, then you need to listen to that and you need to not get the reading. Or if you are somebody who's really suspicious and think, well, this person's going to Google me and look me up, then you need to go to somebody face to face, pay them cash, because you can do that kind of stuff. So you've got to do that kind of stuff, and the less expectation that you can have over what you're going to hear and what is going to come through.
That's dense energy. It's really hard to
Yes.
take a machete and hack away.
Yeah. Yep. And Eric says there really are people who just should never get readings. There are people who just shouldn't get a reading. And if you feel like, it's just not for you, don't push it. Don't force it.
What kind of people should not get readings?
Well, what he says is like people who don't want to know anything about the future, or people who are afraid of what might come up. He said people like that should not get readings, because you might sit in a reading and hear something that makes you uncomfortable, because again, he's like, the interpretation from the other side to the psychic or medium can be a little bit skewed, but he said from the medium to the sitter, the interpretation of information is also different. So he says, you might sit and tell somebody and do a reading, and what they hear and what you thought you said are not the same thing. So if you are somebody who's nervous about getting readings about what you're going to hear, what's going to come through, you should not get a reading. You just should not.
Totally closed minded.
Well, he says, quite frankly, those people really won't do it anyways. Skeptics can get readings. He says skeptics are fine to get readings, because he says a lot of times, he says skeptics are funny, because people who call themselves skeptics, are people who truly want to believe.
Well, so, I guess open-minded skeptics, but not the hard.
Not like the non-believers. He refers to them as non-believers, not skeptics.
Oh,
non-believers.
I see. There we go. That
skeptic is somebody he says skeptic in and of itself means that there is a little bit of an opening.
Oh, okay, cool. Anything else on the responsibility of the sitter, or?
No, he says not really. Just go in with, an open mind and the willingness to hear whatever information is going to come in.
Is there anything that a sitter should do before getting the reading, like increase their vibration by listening to happy music, or anything that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
That can help. He said that can help to boost your energy, or to meditate for a couple minutes before. It can help you feel a little bit centered, because he just said to me, like you, talking to me, when energy starts coming in, you get anxious, you get nervous. You're used to that, but people who sit for readings will oftentimes feel that energy too, and they'll start to feel nervous or anxious, or, what's happening? And he says it's because they're sensing the energy coming in from the other side too.
Oh.
So he said it can be good for them to sometimes, say a little prayer, or take a couple deep breaths to kind of calm that anxiety. Do
any particular crystals help to put in your pocket, or?
Yeah, amethyst is a good one. Clear quartz is a good one. Oh God, he's showing me a light green, like a green calcite. Sorry, like a green calcite for whatever reason. So yeah, there can be, and whatever stone makes you feel comfortable.
Okay, you're drawn to.
Yep.
Okay, yes. So anything else? Or you smudge with sage, or?
You can. He says it depends on the person. It depends on the sitter. If they feel that they need to do something, then they should do it. But he says no. Otherwise, if you don't, you could just walk right in and get a reading, or just get a reading. It just depends person to person.
Make it easier for the medium to tap into the energy. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. It's not.
Yes. And you also
chakras, like, does any chakra need to be tuned or cleared or balanced or anything?
Well, he said kind of all of them. If any of them are real out of whack, it could interrupt and interfere. But he also says too, for somebody who's going to get a reading, there's all kinds of different types of readings you can get. There's tarot card, and there's, you can get readings with crystals, and you can have just a straight psychic reading, a medium reading. You have to also go with what you're drawn to. If you're somebody who's very drawn to the cards and tarot and the oracle cards, he said that you should go to a reader who does that stuff.
Okay. Are there things that a spirit cannot share with the medium?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of stuff that they won't share with us and won't tell us.
Because
Um, I'm sorry?
because why?
Well, sometimes we're not meant to know. Sometimes we're just not meant to know here. So, for instance, if you take a soul from the other side who's been murdered and they don't know who's done it,
Oh,
if the murder is not meant to be solved here, they're not going to come through and say, this is who killed me and this is why and this is, and the other thing Erik says about that is if they did, then the people there might take revenge on their own, or so he said that's an extreme reason why some information just can't come through. But he says also, he says we see over here that some information is truly irrelevant and you just don't need it.
okay.
You just you might want it and you might obsess over it, but that would be another lesson that you would be trying to learn.
This information is on a need to know basis, and you do not need
It
to know.
is.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. They know so much more than us. If we had access to all the information that they had, we wouldn't need to be here.
Okay. Does it take time? I mean, it's weird because there is no time over there, but do you have to wait a certain amount of time after one passes before you can connect with them?
Not necessarily. He said not necessarily. Sometimes they get here right away and they're not like real disoriented and their energy can connect to the other side immediately. But he said, no, there are times when people get here and they're confused or they're disoriented and it will take some time for them. And he said, it's funny because, yeah, there's not time there, but he said there is, but there isn't. There is, but there isn't. So when we refer to time, we're going to talk in human time.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, there might be some souls where, within a day or two of the passing, somebody can connect to them. And there might be others where it takes a month in your time to connect to them.
Oh. Is it because they're still kind of got their human thing going still?
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
just connected
So,
to linear time still? Because I mean, why couldn't they talk to the person's higher self or that person in the afterlife 1 month ahead?
well, he says, quite frankly, not all psychics and mediums will connect to somebody's higher self. They just won't.
Okay.
So they would be looking for that soul that lived that life, that lifetime, not necessarily all the lifetimes that they lived collectively.
Okay.
So he said that would be on the medium's part.
Okay.
But he said there are times when we get back over here, or, we kind of stick in this limbo area where we're not quite gone from Earth and not quite in heaven, I guess, like an in-between
Okay.
stage. And he said, like, if somebody's really into drugs a lot, he said this is one example. If they're very heavy drug users here to where they're already only partially here on Earth and partially
Oh.
someplace else, he said if they, die of like a drug overdose, it can take some time to kind of bring their soul back like into formation is how he's putting it, like because it's so disoriented.
Yeah.
So he said that can take some time, and sometimes real fast passings, real like not expecting out of nowhere kind of passings. He said sometimes they're confused too, and it can take a few days. Or in that situation, sometimes they may stick around on Earth a little bit longer, the soul,
Yeah.
because they don't quite know what's happened. So he said there are instances, but sometimes they go right over, and in the next day or two, somebody could contact them,
Or if they feel
or their
sad,
loved ones could
guilty, and
sense them.
want to hang around and comfort their loved ones on Earth,
Mhm.
like, I
Yep.
guess.
Yep.
Can you channel someone who has reincarnated? Because I know one psychic said, no, you can't, but there's no time. So, I mean, we're living all of our lives, past, present, future, in the now moment.
Yeah, so what Erik has said is he said, yeah, that would actually be more of a connecting to the higher self. That would be like the higher self of that soul kind of answering those questions
Ah,
about that lifetime. Because he's also saying, like, if you had somebody, for instance, who lived to be 40 and they passed at 40 years old, okay? And then they came in very quickly, say 2 years in our human time.
mm-hmm.
And then that soul lives for 10 years and passes. Same soul, died at 40, died at 10. still probably both with loved ones here on Earth.
Oh, wow.
He said a medium would be able to connect to each of those lifetimes.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, he
That's
said it is. He says you're right. It is really cool. It's like it's so cool over here.
so cool over here. Okay, so are there ever spirits that refuse to talk to their loved one because they're pissed off or whatever, or ashamed, or like they do not want to be channeled by a medium?
Yeah, he says yes. There are some who just won't do this. Who don't really come through, and but he says it's not because they're pissed off at their loved ones or they're angry or so upset. But he said there are some souls over here who choose not to connect to the loved ones on Earth.
They don't have those negative feelings over there. At least eventually they don't. But so
Yeah.
why would they choose not to?
Um.
Give me some examples, Eric.
Well, okay. So, for instance, he said sometimes they won't at a specific sitting because they're doing things. They're busy, they've got other stuff going on, and they can't connect, or they won't be able to come through with information. It's not the right time for the information.
Ah,
But he says there are just some who just don't. He says they just don't. They don't really connect through a medium. Oh, I gotcha. They don't really choose to connect through a medium. Okay, they would still be around their loved ones, show their energy to them, but they just choose not to connect through a medium.
okay. Picky. Dang.
Yes.
All right, here's another one from a blog member. My question to the mediums is, after the spirits that are around us go to the other level, ascend, that means they're not looking after us anymore? And I think go ahead.
No, they're still looking after us. They can still see us.
Okay.
Just because they ascend doesn't mean they can't see us
Yeah,
anymore or interact with us.
right. I think that if other entities from other planets also have to improve themselves, that means they will never be happy. It will be lives of learning nonstop. Well, you can have a life of learning and be
Still be
happy.
happy. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
What are the earmarks, the red flags for a medium or psychic who's a fraud? What do we look for, Eric?
Okay. One of the things is if the person asks a lot of questions up front, if they're asking for a lot of information up front. Now, there is, as the reading goes on, there's going to be an exchange of information, questions back and forth, and questions and answers. But if you sit down with somebody and they ask 5 to 10 questions right off the bat, he said that's other than yes no questions, like that kind of thing. Do you have specific questions today? Yes or no? Are you looking to connect to somebody on the other side? Yes or no? Not those, but if they're fishing for information. He also says one of the things to be really wary of is if you sit down with somebody to get a reading and they tell you that you're cursed, or they tell you that you need to, especially if they're asking for a lot of money to break this curse, that really is
That's stupid. God.
yeah, it happens a lot, and that's a big one. That's definitely a big one. Oh, I can get rid of this. I can get this off you. Or somebody's somebody's putting negative energy onto you, because it's not always just like, oh, it's a spirit, but it can be, oh, somebody here in your life is, putting negative stuff on you, and I can clear that out for you. Now, if you truly do feel like you've got some dark energy on you and you seek somebody else to do that, to clear your energy, balance your energy, that's different.
Okay.
That's different, because that is a fear tactic
Yeah.
that some psychics will use, and mediums.
What else, Eric?
Your instinct, your intuition.
Oh,
He
yeah.
said that is the best one. He
Yeah.
said if you sit down or you go into a place, or you're watching a video and you just don't get a good vibe, he said you got to listen to that. You have to listen to that. That's your biggest indicator.
Okay.
If anything feels off.
I also think it's really important, and I've been guilty of this, for the sitter not to ask leading questions. Some people just like want to get the answer, you know, that they're
Yes.
seeking, and they'll ask questions in a way that makes it very difficult for the medium or psychic to not give them that, you know. So
Yes.
ask
Yes.
very, you know, giving as little information as possible so it doesn't
Yes.
go to the medium's analytical mind and not
Correct.
asking leading questions. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. And there is also the factor of the medium and the psychic not wanting to disappoint the person that they're sitting in front of. So,
Yeah.
yes, if you keep asking about a situation, or you have to remember the person doesn't. If you're, I always like to use boyfriend girlfriend type of thing, but if you're wanting to know about your relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and the reader says, well, just kind of see where it goes, then they're probably not getting a whole lot of information. It probably really is a wait and see. You have to learn the lessons here, whatever it is you're supposed to be experiencing, you need to experience. If you keep pushing and pushing, yes, that takes away from the reading.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
um yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So
Oh, go ahead.
nope, no, I'm good.
Okay. Um, how can you find a medium? Of course, a word of mouth, and then
Mhm.
I guess you can go to YouTube, right, and watch them at work. I mean, what's some of the better ways to find a psychic or a medium or a psychic medium?
Yeah, so definitely YouTube, definitely word of mouth. I mean, Googling, going to their websites, reading their, the bios, the reviews, that kind of stuff
Okay.
is very good. If you have the opportunity, if you live someplace where you're lucky enough to live near a spiritual community where there is a lot of readers, I always recommend going in person if you can.
Okay.
And talking, seeing who's in the town or the area to see. That's great, because that's really the best way to interpret the energy, is to meet face to face and to be right in the energy.
All right, I think I only have one more question. Really, is the whole money thing, and people are, how dare that medium charge money? She has a gift that she, I mean,
Yes.
it has to be equal energy exchange. Even if the psychic or psychic medium are, independently wealthy, you have to have equal energy exchange. And
Yeah.
if you're not independently wealthy, they got to pay their mortgage, or they got to
Yes.
put food on the table. But Eric, is there anything you want to say about the whole money button?
So I I totally lost the end of that, but I think that you were asking like anything to say about that or whatever.
Eric, do you have anything to
So
say about the money button? And of course,
yes.
Jennifer can chime in.
Yeah, he's like, you have to make a living. People have to make a living. People, he said, people on earth are gifted with many gifts that come from the other side, or the universe, or God, or whatever you want to call them. He said, nobody asks a musician with a beautiful voice who's making millions of dollars if they really think it's right that they're using their gift to make money and to earn a living.
Right.
Because he said that's every bit as much of a gift from God or the universe or whatever, as somebody who's able to connect to the other side.
And
um,
this is too, well, hey, you can save lives. You should be doing that for free.
right, exactly. He said it's not feasible there. You need money. You
Yeah.
need money to live. And he said, for people who, if you are a gifted psychic or a medium and you don't charge, you're probably going to actually be able to help a lot less people, because you don't have a valid business. You cannot put all your energy into that, because you'll have to do something else to make money.
Yeah. And I
um,
think people will take you seriously and think, wow, she doesn't charge. I don't know. Then
right.
you're devaluing yourself, and that energy is not a very easy one to plow
Yes.
through either.
Yes,
So,
absolutely,
what about the people
absolutely.
who charge like $800 an hour? I mean, I know one medium that does that.
Yeah. um
I mean, I won't put you on. You don't have to say
no,
anything, Jennifer.
no,
We'll let
no,
Eric
he's
take the heat.
to be very honest with you, Eric says, you know what, that is between them and their energy and their guides, and what they're doing. He said it's not for us to judge.
Oh, okay. It just seems to
So
me like
yeah.
the people that can afford it are, well, that they're that opens up to are the extremely wealthy or the extremely
Yes.
desperate. So I mean,
Yes.
that's just I shouldn't judge you, right? But
Well, he says, that's on them, that's theirs.
yeah.
And the other thing that he's talking about here is that people want proof. For the people who want absolute proof that this exists and that this is real, he said, you're not going to get it. This is not tangible. He said, this is not a physical thing that we can touch and feel. It is about what, how it makes you feel, what you think, what you believe. He says there's so much evidence. There's so much evidence out there that the other side exists and that there is something beyond this world. He said, but there's no proof.
Oh, of course not.
With,
Well, I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
when I heard that EVP of you saying, love you, Mom, I mean,
Yes, and
that's
see,
proof.
but see,
That's got to be proof.
for you, that's proof. But
Oh,
he said
God.
this is not like scientific, undisputable. There's no proof, because he said a million people would hear that and say, well, no, this is what it was, or that's what it was, or it's a hoax. It's not irrefutable proof. And he said, you're just not going to get that here. But there's so much
Not
evidence.
until we go to that side, then there's the proof.
Yes, exactly. And it's not and he says, and actually he's like talking to you directly. Um he says, we do what we do. You and Eric, we do what we do to let people have access to that, but it is not for us to make people believe.
No.
And he said, you just put the information out there, but it's not for us to make people to believe. And
God,
if
I don't
people
have the
don't
time and
believe,
energy to do that.
no.
I mean, people
And
got
he,
to find their own path, like I did. It took me 40
yes,
years before I totally believed.
yep. And he says, for those people who say nasty things and do, I know exactly where he's going with this. The people who say nasty things and the naysayers and the doubters, he said, feel sad for them. Feel sad for them. They are to almost to be pitied and to be loved. We don't have to do it outwardly. We can do it inwardly,
Yeah.
because how sad for them to not believe at all in any of this. He said, for those of us who do, so much happier.
Oh my gosh, so comforting,
Yes.
All right, so you guys can connect with Jennifer at psychic medium Jennifer Doran.com. Here,
Yep.
I'll put it, right? This little title page. And anything else you want to share, Jennifer or Eric?
No, just thank you. And of course, he says he loves you. I love you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. I love you guys. I love you, Eric. Love you, Jen.
Love you. Bye.
Bye-bye.